So even though nobody who's planning to run in 2020 has announced their candidacy yet, I think it's safe to say that the 2020 Democratic Party primary has already kicked off for all intents and purposes because everybody is making moves currently to position themselves in a place to run next year. Now, one thing that really struck me about news regarding 2020 that came out this week is that Democratic Party strategists, top strategists, mind you, as out of touch as they usually are, at least seem to see the writing on the wall with regard to Bernie Sanders, and they believe that he'll ultimately emerge as the Democratic Party's nominee and will face off against Donald Trump in 2020. Now, if Democratic Party strategists are saying this, you know that members of the establishment are absolutely terrified, they're scrambling, and look, they know that members of the progressive movement, we're not getting off the Bernie bus anytime soon. And if you don't get on board, then you might get hit by it. But nonetheless, establishment Democrats are currently scrambling to compete with Bernie Sanders, at least when it comes to money. And they're now competing in what's known as the New York money primary. And individuals like Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden are calling big money donors in Manhattan to talk about policy ideas, which really is code for, I'm running, give me money. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed, or frankly a lot disappointed, that Elizabeth Warren is also allegedly competing in the New York money primary. I don't know if she's even going to run at all. It seems like she's going to, but if she's going to run, she's got to do it like Bernie Sanders, because if she takes corporate money, that will be awful, right? It'll be a betrayal even further of the trust that she once had. So, they're certainly doing what they can ahead of the 2020 primary to raise money with big money donors, and they're basically just calling up a lot of powerful people in Manhattan, and they're trying to talk to them and cultivate this friendship and relationship so that way when they do officially announce their bid, they'll get money from them. Now, additionally, other members of the establishment are scrambling to fend off a Bernie challenge. And when I say other members of the establishment, I'm talking about the Democratic Party's biggest donors, the puppeteers. And they're currently trying to push Mark Warner into the race as a moderate alternative to progressives like Bernie Sanders and even Elizabeth Warren. So these Democratic Party donors hear what top strategists in the Democratic Party are saying about how Bernie Sanders is basically unstoppable at this point, and they're getting really worried, and they're trying to do whatever they can to make sure they put up someone who could beat Bernie Sanders. Now, last year in the Hamptons, donors were all abuzz about Kamala Harris, and I'm sure a lot of them still are. But now, a lot of donors are starting to line up behind someone like Mark Warner, who has vocalized his desire to not run. He stated pretty unequivocally that he doesn't want to run, but they're trying to push him into the race to get him to run, basically just to defeat Bernie Sanders. So it's really funny to see individuals in the establishment scramble now. And behind the scenes, some future candidates are now having meetings with President Obama, and presumably he is giving them advice on how to launch a successful campaign, since he did in fact run 2 successful presidential campaigns. And he actually quietly met with 9 possible 2020 contenders, including Joe Biden, Deval Patrick, Elizabeth Warren, and yes, also Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm assuming that they sought advice from Obama, but they didn't just talk about 2020, because Bernie Sanders actually reportedly spoke to him about the future of the party and the divide in the party, between practicality and idealism. And Warren was actually invited to speak with him after she called him out for taking $400,000 from Wall Street for just one speech. So, I mean, when you see all of these news articles, really story after story coming out about everyone who is preparing and positioning themselves to run in 2020, I think for progressives, we need to read that as it already kicked off. So the minute Bernie Sanders announces his campaign, if he runs, which, I mean, he's probably going to run. But the minute he announces, I will be donating to his campaign, I want him to hit the ground running. So I'm going to give him money. whatever you can give him, $1 or $2, anything, even if you can't donate, if you can offer him grassroots support in the form of phone banking or canvassing, that could also prove to be invaluable. So look, progressives, we need to learn from 2016, and we need to work even harder than we did last time, because we already know that the party establishment will be trying to work against us. I wouldn't be surprised if the DNC did even more shenanigans, knowing that they need to stop Bernie Sanders if they want to keep the gravy train rolling with their corporate donors. So look, we've got to be prepared, and for the most part, we need to basically pretend as if the 2020 primary already kicked off, but we can't forget about 2018 and make sure that we still get progressives elected where we can and defeat Republicans. So look, this is all interesting, and I'm getting excited. I'm getting hopeful at the prospect of potentially getting a true progressive in 2020 after we were robbed, brazenly so, in 2016.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.